Good morning, I'm Adam Sexton. No matter what happens, it's going to be an historic week in New Hampshire politics. Either longtime Secretary of State and Defender-in-Chief of the first-in-the-nation primary, Bill Gardner, will lose the office he's held for 4 decades, or he's going to be re-elected in what would in some ways be an upset, and in other ways would be just business as usual for someone who's been winning elections since before the challenger in this race was even born. Secretary of State Bill Gardner is our guest this morning. Thanks for joining us, sir.
You bet.
So, safe to say your legacy is pretty much etched in stone no matter what happens on this vote on Wednesday. But, you know, I think no one would dispute that you've done great service to the state, but 42 years is a long time. Why 2 more?
Well, I certainly want to continue the way we do our elections here, keep New Hampshire at the top of the country like it has been for a long time. It's only a 2-year term. The legislature makes that decision every 2 years, and we have a special event also in the next 2 years. It's the 100th anniversary of New Hampshire having the first-in-the-nation primary. And so I have a special interest in wanting to be there for another 2 years, but to continue as we have been, having our elections the way they are, and easiest place in the country to register and to vote, and to keep it that way.
Let's rewind to 2016. President-elect Donald Trump says there's, quote, serious voter fraud in New Hampshire, an allegation for which he presented no evidence at the time, and you have since, through an exhaustive investigation, proved that to be false. There was no extensive voter fraud in New Hampshire in 2016. You have tremendous authority in this realm. Why didn't you push back more forcefully on that statement when it happened?
Well, I knew that that wasn't the case, because over the years, several people have come to me, they're in my office at public hearings, and said, well, I've seen this. I've seen buses come in, and I've always said just, well, the next time you do, take a picture of it. Do something. So when, first of all, when I was asked to do it, I felt that it was better to be at the table than on the menu. I felt that it was important to be a defender of New Hampshire, to be there. I wasn't afraid that any review of our election would result in those allegations, because there was no reason to believe those allegations. And on the other hand, if I said no, then the pushback would be, well, what are you afraid of? You're hiding something. And look what happened. The first meeting outside of the organization meeting was in New Hampshire. That was no accident. If I wasn't there, it wouldn't have been in New Hampshire. And that meeting ended the commission because of what happened at that meeting.
Right, there was controversy there, but do you think that they exploited your credibility with elections?
Well, in hindsight, you have to take it at the very beginning. The first time that all of us were on a conference call, we were told by the vice president that there was going to be spirited debates, there was going to be disagreements, but the most important thing was to try to work toward a common ground. And that was repeated not only at that conference call, but at the very first meeting. If I knew months later that some of the things that had come out, then it would have been different. But I didn't know that, and New Hampshire had nothing to be afraid of, and I wanted to be the defender of New Hampshire. I mean, whenever anyone gets asked to be on some national commission, why would someone be afraid to defend New Hampshire? I knew what we had. I knew more than anyone what we had here. So that's why.
Let's shift our focus back to the State House. Critics have faulted your support for Republican-authored election legislation, SB 3, HB 372, and 1264. Democrats have argued this is tantamount to voter suppression, and you've really taken issue with being sort of cast as a vote suppressor. Why is that?
Well, I only take positions at public hearings on legislation that actually affects the duties of the Secretary of State. There are 18 articles in the Constitution. It's a very rare position of state government that has articles in the Constitution that actually mandate your duties. So, and I've had the opportunity over the years to work with a lot of other secretaries of state. And for a few years, I was president of the National Association. I got to see their operations, and I've learned things. I've learned some things that work in other states and some things that don't. And so it's important for the legislature to hear that at hearings. But I don't deal with things that are not under the office mandate. For instance, like gerrymandering. Gerrymandering is a legislative, constitutionally mandated, redistricting is done by the legislature. Legislature can't pass off constitutional duties to some other body. They have to meet those mandates that are in the Constitution. So I don't get into things like that that have nothing to do.
But the allegation is out there that you were complicit, allegedly, according to Democrats, in voter suppression.
Well, New Hampshire is the easiest state in the country to vote. We're the only state in the country that has no durational residency requirement and no provisional ballots. The closest state to us that has no provisional ballots is Minnesota. All the states around us have provisional ballots. Why are we second, third, fourth, second, third in elections across the country in turnout? It's because we are the easiest state to participate in. And we've had, and this election was, recent election was no different. And the next one will be no different. And the one in 2016, we were second if you based it on voting eligible voters, if that was a denominator, and we were third if you based it on voting age. But we're ahead of the states around us, and it's this election had SB 3 as part of it, and in Manchester and the other cities, it's been the 4th time that the people have voted with that law in effect. And did we hear the cries of suppression on Election Day? No.
So a lot of your allies say that if your opponent takes office as Secretary of State, that potentially New Hampshire's first-in-the-nation primary status could be put at risk. Do you share that view?
Well, yes, yes. You can't just push a button and keep the New Hampshire primary according to our law. Our law doesn't give you a button to push. Our law simply says that the primary has to be 7 or more days ahead of any other state that has a similar election. When 2 states decided to have laws that said that they had to have their primary on the same day as New Hampshire, there wasn't anything in our law that we could look to and say, oh, I'm just going to follow the law and take care of this. That's not the way it is. And you have to be able to work with both parties in the states that are trying to do this, and both parties have to work in this state together. So it's, I've been the person that had to set the date for 10 presidential primaries. Some of them have been more difficult than others. Some of them had other states trying to take away that tradition from us. Sometimes it's been the national parties that have tried to do it. But there's no button to push to do it. It's not there. You have to find a way to do it. And why is it that the Secretary of State makes that decision? Because when the language was introduced, the governor at the time said, because they were going to have the governor do it, and the governor said, governors get involved in these campaigns. They support candidates. I will veto a bill that gives it to the governor. And then they thought they were going to give it to a legislative committee. And they said, well, that's going to be a... And then it was, well, it should be the Secretary of State because that office is separate. That's not an office like the governor. That office doesn't have political action committees. That office doesn't have fundraising. That office isn't connected in any ways to the campaigns. And so they placed that authority, which is very unique in state government, that one person can make that decision. They placed it in the Secretary of State's office because the tradition of the office. And that's what's at risk here.
I want to get in one last quick question here. Your opponent faces a lot of questions about using the office as a stepping stone. We know that's not a concern for you, but it's on the flip side of that. Do you ever plan to retire? Is there a focus for you that this could be the last term or two?
I have a 2-year term. Most state department heads have 4, some have 5, some have 6 years. That's a legislative decision. As I mentioned, I've done 10 primaries. The next one's going to be a big one because it's the 100th anniversary. Our strongest suit over the years has been that we've been able to say to the rest of the country, this came here naturally. We never took it from anyone else, and we have done it right. And I have something that I just give you a quick example. Bob Schieffer covered the primary for 40 years. He was at St. Anselm's College a few years ago, just before he retired. He's a pillar in the press. Everyone considered him one of the fairest. And he was asked a question: why do you so strongly support the New Hampshire primary? And so why do so many of those like you that have been here all those years? And he looked at the reporter and he said, because New Hampshire has never let us down. And I like that.
Secretary of State Bill Gardner, we'll see how this goes on December 5th. Thank you for joining us.
You bet.